Throughout this course, you'll be expected to not only interpret and analyze many different types of graphs, but also to create a variety of graphs that are utilized to chart information. This is an essential skill that will be focused on every unit of this course. These types of graphs and skills that will for sure be tested are line graphs, projections, bar charts, pie charts, scatter plots, tolerance graphs, and statistical uncertainty. For this type of graph, please read the excerpt to understand the species tolerance. Look at the two tolerance graphs and answer the questions that are provided in Schoolology. Now for this first graph, each species on Earth has a range of physical tolerances within which they can survive that can be called their tolerance zone. This zone can be described with many physical factors like temperature or pH by a tolerance graph. As you see in this bell curve, everything that falls under the bell curve is an area which falls into the range of physical conditions that a species may survive. It can be fish, it can be koalas. There is a low and there is a high range for these animals to live and to live well. The optimal zone is a range of a physical factor like temperature within which most individuals of species can not only survive but also thrive. That would be this part right here, the A section. Most members of a species live on a part of Earth that has a physical condition that are within the species' optimal range. Just above and below the optimal ranges are regions in which physical conditions are not optimal, but in which some individuals of species would still be able to survive. These are called stress zones because they cause form of physical stress in organisms living under those conditions. Now, mutations could come about that allow organisms to thrive in those zones, and that could change the range of physical conditions in which they can live, given the chance that mutations have occurred, or adaptations. But we're looking at things in a smaller time frame, or of decades, or within that day. Let's look at a specific example, a plant. This plant species has an optimal temperature range of 15 to 25 degrees Celsius. At temperatures above 25 degrees Celsius, the heat causes the plant to lose more water by evaporation in its leaves than it could replace with its roots. Its leaves wilt, and photosynthesis, the process by which plants use solar energy to make food for itself, stops. If the plant is in these conditions for too long, it will make less food than individuals of the same species that are living within their optimal temperature range. It will not be able to grow as fast and may not produce enough energy to make the flowers or seeds at all. At the end of the temperature range, individuals of species living in regions where temperature is cold, less than 15 degrees Celsius, have other problems. The cold slows down chemical reactions in their cells, making photosynthesis, which is growth, and reproduction slow down as well. In this case, the plants living in a cold region have the same end result as the plants living in a hot regions. Many individuals of species will not be able to tolerate the stress caused by either the heat or cold, and they eventually die. Even if they don't die, they won't make it as many seeds as individuals living in the optimal temperature zone, and fewer seeds means fewer individuals in the next generation. So the number of living individuals in the stress zone is always smaller than the number in the optimal condition zone. Now, going back to the graph, the tolerance limits are absolute limits above or below which no members of the species can survive. Outside of the tolerance limits, there are lethal zones where no members of a species can live. For a plant, if the upper tolerance temperature is 30 degrees Celsius, any plant subjected to that temperature for more than a few minutes or hours will begin to die, or just flat out die. Tolerance is the most basic factor that determines where on Earth a species can live. The other factors, evolutionary history, barriers, species interactions, can limit a species' distribution even more, but they can never allow a species to live outside of its tolerance limits. Because of this, we can make a general statement that the greater the tolerance range, the larger the geographical area in which a species is distributed. Now, when you go to tackle the questions provided, make sure to read over both tolerance graphs provided. The first is just a generalized label tolerance chart to help you see which zones are represented. The second one is more specified information provided for the questions you're given.